Welcome to Soul Journey Doula, a Big Blend Radio end-of-life podcast featuring Lea Brovedani. Welcome, everybody. You know, right now is right after Mother's Day, and we're heading into Father's Day. And, it's that time of year when we think about everyone getting together, even grandparents with grandkids, and everyone getting together for summer. And it kind of opens those doors for a discussion about end of life for parents. So it could be parents saying, hey, I want to talk to my kids about what I'm planning for my end of life, wills, all that stuff, estate planning, you name it, all that paperwork or it could be the kids saying, hey, mom, dad, let's check it out. Or mom and mom, dad and dad, let's check out what's happening for your end of life. Are you prepared? Do you have life insurance? That kind of thing. It is not an easy topic because none of us want to think about any of our family going away unless they're really, you see, we always get crazy like that. Lee, I didn't say that, did I? I did, but you know what I mean. It's,
you did.
Yeah, but
we always inject a little bit of humor into our talks about death.
I always say these conversations are candid and compassionate, but we always have humor. But because, we talk about family sometimes, well, a lot of times, and then we always have that one person you're like, oh, really? But honestly, deep down, we all know there's love there somewhere, and I think with parents,
absolutely.
It's really difficult because if for kids to go to their parents and to be in that position, it's really hard to say, hey, what are you planning for the end of your life? And that's kind of like the what. And the other way around, kids don't want to think about their parents going away, no matter what age. It really doesn't matter. I think about Nancy and I don't want her gone. I don't want to talk about it, but she's like, we have to look at this in the business and how we're going to continue this and all of that. And it sucks. Can I just say that? But dealing with it feels better than not dealing with it. And later it can really suck, right? At the end, if we don't do this.
Absolutely. Oh, and get to know what your parents like. And you don't need to bring it up like, so you're going to die and you're getting old and, maybe ease into it.
Don't do the introduction like I just did. It's what Lee's saying.
No, it can be a conversation on, because think about all of the different aspects that you're going to have. You're going to have the eulogy. You're going to have, hopefully you're going to have a celebration of life. And so you can enter it by saying, I don't think we've ever talked about the things that you really loved and you're so excited about things that you did in your childhood. I'd like to know a little bit more. So you can talk about the things that are wonderful in their life, in the past and in the present.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
I was going to just say that you could bring up a reason of that conversation too, like, oh, someone at work was talking about this with their parents, and it made me think that of you. You know what I mean? Is that, it's kind of a warmer.
There's all kinds of different ways, and every parent is different. So it's not like you and I are going to say, this is how you say it to your parents, because it depends on the parent. When I tried to talk to my mom about writing a directive, you could see the panic in her eyes. She said, no, I don't want to talk about that. You can decide that later. And it was crazy because we didn't know, we kind of knew what she wanted, but it could even be if someone has recently died. And you and I have talked about the fact that one of your friends definitely didn't want this really religious service.
Oh, yeah.
And they did it. And it was at a location that was 666. Like, there was a lot of funny things about it, but the lights went out at a certain point.
So on Elm Street.
In order for weird things not to happen, maybe you should find out what the person wants and try and honor what they want.
Yeah. And by doing it with a conversation, and I also think it's really, I think everyone in a family has to have this discussion, because it's kind of, especially when kids are born, like, when there's grandkids suddenly, this is the time to
Yeah.
do it because it's like, okay, if you're the kids and now you just had kids, right? Then you've got to
Yeah.
think, oh, what happens if something happens to me? Like we always talk about, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and it could happen. And it's not always about age. So it's really a family discussion that should always be there. Nancy and I always have this discussion because anything could happen to us. We travel full time. We're driving. God, I need to touch wood like right now somewhere. Someone give me
And
wood.
you're a fabulous driver, but you know that not everybody you're on the road with are fabulous drivers.
No, they're not. And
So,
it's worse after COVID. So let me go not get into a rant. But the reality is like we all ages. So it's kind of like, we can always go like, hey, I'm doing this because I have kids now and I realize, or I got married and I realize, hey, if something happens to me, you should know. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
I think as adults, we need to have those, that discussion for all ages because anyone could die at any time. Really. I'm
And,
getting candid.
if you want to ease into it, you can always say, oh, I read this really cool thing that you can be made into compost and plant a tree. Wouldn't that be cool? I think that's the way I want. What would you like?
Lee,
So
you are
you
really stuck
can.
on this composting thing.
Oh yeah, I
You're in it.
definitely want to be I definitely want to be composted and turned into a tree. So
So you have
yeah.
no problem telling your kids how you want to go because you're just saying it all the time on the show. She wants to be
Yeah, yeah.
composted.
So, what do you mean? Or buried? Like, fine, you can bury me, but not with anything. Don't embalm me. Don't put those chemicals into the soil. I want it to be very natural. And I don't want to be cremated because that takes, what is it, 79 gallons of fuel, which is equivalent to 700-mile trip. It's not a green alternative. So you get that, for me, it has to be a green alternative, very natural, put a shrub,
Mm,
plant me in the earth or make me compost, whatever. That's my wishes. Some people might be going, oh my God, that's just gross. And that would be
yeah.
them. And as a doula, I'm not here to impose what I believe is true on anybody else. It is all about what they want.
Mm.
But you have to ask, you have to have the conversation.
Does that happen as a doula? Because sometimes, like I was laughing earlier about sometimes families have their ups and downs and all arounds, and kind of who doesn't? Come on, let's just all be honest
Yeah.
here. I don't know anybody with family. I mean, because we're all human and we do stupid things. So let's just get real honest and real candid. I know you'll get the compassion side any second here and fix whatever I say. But really, you know what? It's kind of like um get together, have these conversations, understand each other, do it kindly. There's all these different ways you can go. I know you want to be composted, and I love that idea, and it's respectful. But sometimes as a doula, I'm wondering if, especially if there's been rifts in families, and it's like, okay, I maybe want to make amends, but like I don't know what to do. Like, do you help people kind of go, okay, maybe I did screw up. Like, let me just say, like, I've screwed up a lot of relationships in life. So I'll call you up
Yeah,
and I'll say,
me
Lee,
too.
I screwed up. I'm going to have to do something I don't want to leave this earth with, you know, Klingons of stuff I've done that I need to really make amends. And I want to go off in this way. Maybe I want to go and be composted in the redwoods. I like that plan. Um, so whatever it is. But I'm going to have to tell like maybe Nancy or other family. Nancy, I shouldn't even bring her in the equation because I tell her everything. But there's no conversation off the bat. But I kind of feel like sometimes we ignore parts of the family that maybe we'll feel better if we go and make those amendments or what do you call it? You go and face it, face the music, and at least get things off your chest and bring in forgiveness of each other. And maybe they don't want to hear from you ever, but at least you've done it. You've done what you needed to do. Make amends is the word, not amendments, make amends. And so I
Yeah.
wonder about that in regards to families because things happen and parents divorce and split, remarry, and maybe you don't like the new person. So there's all of those weird things that can be part of it. But I think this, let's just look at this as a summer of love. And like maybe we can just kind of go in and say, okay, love, but as a doula, do you help, maybe not facilitate all of that, but help someone with their roadmap to fix things and kind of and how to make those communications happen with their kids, their spouses, their loved ones, their parents, whoever they need to.
What I would do if someone is in that is set some realistic expectations and ask what it is they want to accomplish. So it may not be possible to have this kumbaya moment with people that you feel there's a big rift. But what you can do, you look at what you can do. So let's help them write a letter and send it to them. The whole thing is to give people comfort at the end of their life. So that, perhaps there's no unresolved areas. But all of the doulas that I've talked to have said that there's some pretty miraculous things that happen, that people that they haven't talked to for 20, 30, 40 years, and they feel like they've completely lost contact and there's no way that they've gotten in touch with them, all of a sudden, that person reaches out, finds their number, and calls them. It's just, I can't say that that's going to happen all the time, but there is something about death that brings in magic. I don't know how else to put it. There's things that you can't explain, and one of them is, like I said, the person that you've been thinking of and you wanted to talk to one last time, all of a sudden calls you out of the blue in the final month or so of your life. So, like, I had one woman who said that she wanted to go through, I think I might have talked about this in another podcast, wanted to go through all of her VHS tapes, and she had about 80 of them. And I said, how many hours on each VHS tape? And I think it was like 6 or 7 hours. And she wanted to do a video for each of her kids. And I said, so let's work this out. You've got 80 tapes. Each one has 6 to 8 hours. So that is, and I said, so 300, let's say conservatively, 360 hours that you have to watch and then edit and put together.
It's a lot.
I try and, make people see that there's things that are realistic that they can do. So what we did with her is that she was going to at least sort them and say, here's the tapes that have this child, so I'm going to give them the tapes and write them a letter. So if you want to have that kind of peaceful end of life, then let's work out what is realistic, what you can actually do, how we can do it, and then make a plan and do it. It's not enough to just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I help him do it. I don't believe that you just write it down. I believe that there's only joy in the action.
I love that you bring this up with the lady with the VHS tapes. I know we did touch on it before, but it's in another way of this. It's kind of like sometimes just because, and magic does happen, like you said, and I know I've mentioned it before, one of my great loves of life who, we split up and he got married, but we still loved and cared for each other. We had two different paths, even politically. I don't know if we'd get along right now. But now I'm going to get beamed in the middle of the night. Something's going to buzz in my ear or something. But like the day before he died, he suddenly messaged, we were friends on Facebook, and, we've always been friends and friends with, he's friends with Nancy and everything. And he messaged me about something and we talked a little bit, and we haven't talked for about a year or something, a couple of years, maybe, I don't know. And then he died the next day. I was like, holy cow, like what the heck? That was weird. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And so that's that magic.
And that's part of the magic.
Yeah, that weird stuff that we just don't know. We can't put our finger on, and we can, say it's God, or we can say it's this, that, and the other. but it is that magic. I like the word magic because everyone has different beliefs, right? But then, like,
Yeah,
when you think about trying to sometimes do things, with family feuds, and I didn't even know we are going to get into family stuff today, but I suppose we are when we talk, parents and kids. Um, I love the VHS thing because sometimes just because you're ready to, forgive and forget or rekindle or at least, just say sorry or whatever it is. Maybe you're the one on the way out, right? Or vice versa. But let's say you're the one on the way out. The other person may not be ready for it.
yeah,
They just
yeah,
may not be ready. And everybody comes into their own readiness at their own time. Everybody has lessons in life at their own time when they're supposed to learn them. And sometimes it's a hard knock and sometimes it's subtle, but sometimes like things like, digitizing these tapes and here's these family photos and videos and everything. That can be something that down the road someone's going to cherish. I mean, look at everyone doing family
yeah,
history. That's like, please don't throw letters away. I mean, what are we going to do now with the emails and text messages? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. How's that going to go in a museum, right? But when you think about it, doing things like that, it's like you're allowing some kind of unity to be there once you're gone, and people can accept it when they are ready to accept it. And you've done your thing to do
yes,
something. Is that,
yeah,
it's cool about that. It's a cool story about that
yeah,
lady. Yeah, you
yeah.
can do
And
things.
there are things like I think um, my now husband at that time we were corresponding. We were just going to have this hot relationship, and then he was going off to Africa to travel across, like down through Africa on a Bedford truck, and that was going to be the end of the relationship. And it didn't stop. We wrote each other every week, and we both kept all the letters. And that's from 40. We're going to be celebrating our 40th anniversary. So we've got all of these sometimes raunchy letters and pictures and funny things that we've kept. And that's a project for
Yeah.
probably the next couple of years of putting it all together and leaving it to my daughter and my son, because they'll
Oh,
look
that's
at it and
awesome.
they'll
That
just
that is
roll their eyes
awesome.
and go, "Oh my God, they were so corny."
Yeah, but we all have corniness. It's like, but just don't be that couple that annoys your friends every time you go to dinner with them. You know what I mean? Just come on, take it home. But
Yeah,
but if people need
yeah,
love and corniness, it's a good thing. So this thing about really getting together and even starting that conversation, I think that's the important thing.
yeah,
And for families that are close, do it, right? Because it's about making sure. And also, I do think people should discuss things like, life insurance and all of that kind of stuff, right? There should be who's
where
paying for
are the
what.
boxes held? Yeah, and things like my one of my best friends, her dad is so organized that he knows that, I mean, he's in his 90s now, but he has a box. He has shown his kids where it is, and it has, rather than trying to figure out on the internet, and he's savvy, like he's internet savvy, but he's got everything written in a file, and
Uh,
people can access it. So it's got his will, all of the accounts, all of the properties, who gets what, and where everything is. Now you can actually go online and you can buy those boxes that give you all the categories, and you fill it out, and then you just tell your kids, here's where everything is. So when my husband's mom died, she had accounts that all of a sudden, like, we'd be investigating things and you'd find a passbook from a bank that you didn't know she was dealing with. And she didn't have everything at one bank because towards the end she was a little
well,
paranoid. So you can do all kinds of things, like have the conversation. And it doesn't matter. Like you said, you don't have to be 80 or 90 or 70 or whatever. It can be for someone who's in their 20s.
you know, this is how to look at it. This is kind of how I look at it, because we do parks and public lands, right? So
Yeah,
that's our thing is we travel the country. And when you go off for a wilderness hike, and I know Lee, you've done a lot of wilderness stuff and scuba diving and all of it, right?
yeah,
And I haven't done this kind of big hike for a long time, and I don't know if I will at this close proximity of time. But when you go for a big hike, we all see these stories of people lost in the Grand Canyon or some other park or whatever, right? These hiking incidences. You
yeah,
typically have a emergency context. You may have to get a wilderness permit. So everybody knows on the permit that this is your emergency contact. This is who, what, where, and ever, and because you're going on a big walk in the wilderness, it's kind of like dying. You're floating out on
yeah,
another adventure, right? And you have to have your ducks in the row. Like you have to have someone taking care of your animals. So, Nancy and I pet sit as we travel. And I always say to people, I want to know when you land somewhere. I want to know. I don't care if you're, going from country to country. I want to know because if something happens, we're here in your home with your babies. And if
yes,
there's something we can do, we need to know. I always want backup stuff. We want backup numbers. It's like I know you have had pet sitters too, and you have to do that guide on trusted house sitters, where we all have to fill in the world because in case of emergency, ICE, that is
yeah,
actually the conversation you're having with your family, whether it's the parents and the kids or the kids and the parents. It's like, in case of emergency, what do we all do? And having that plan, like, we've gone through wildfires and, hurricanes and floods and tornadoes. Families have to have that. Do we have backup supplies in case we need to go in the tornado shelter? What are we going to do with the dogs if there's a tornado or a hurricane? All of those things, I think death should be part of the conversation all the time. I really believe that. And it's your fault for me thinking this way because you're a death doula and we keep having these conversations. And all I get is press releases now about death doulaing and ads about mortuaries. Thank you. But,
And what I want to remind people is it's not about death, it's about living your fullest life until that last moment. And when that
yes,
last moment comes, people are able to celebrate you the way you want to be celebrated because you've got things organized.
yeah. And so is this not like the ICE thing of having all these things in place? It's like
Yeah,
Nancy and I have to do it with passwords. And I mean, it could be me going out for groceries and something happens or we have weird things happening in the world. Death can come in different ways, and that's just your next ticket to your next adventure. That's kind of how I look at it, you know?
there's a comedian in Canada called Sean Cullen,
Oh,
and
yes.
he does this whole thing about is it the food of your choice is going to kill you? And he does this little riff
Mm.
on how you're going to die. It's hilarious. You have to trust me, but it um, some of the ways people die, it's really hard not to go. Okay, they must have wanted to go out and give everybody a chuckle. Like there was one guy who was riding a motorcycle and he was hit by a goose, and it killed him.
Yeah.
You know,
See
guy hit
that?
his goose.
Well, you see, we have to have the humor. We've done care, compassion, and humor, and straight up candidacy, right? We're candid
Yeah.
here, but that's the thing. Things happen. It's like, I mean, if I die eating pizza, like no one would question that. If I die drinking wine, no one would question that. They would go, well, she's doing, if I die in a park on a hike, no one would question that. You're doing what you love, you
Yeah.
know. If I was dying dancing in a band, no one would question that. They would just go, she went a little too crazy again. It's okay. So it's, things happen and wonky things happen, but again, it's also part of that magic. So the whole thing about the next great adventure, and maybe we should look at it that way, is like, oh,
Yeah.
it's a send-off party and let's see what we can do. I mean, when we find out our best friend has cancer, it's like, oh crap, how do we say, what do we do? What do we say? I mean, and you're never going to be perfectly right, but I will guarantee you that if some humor doesn't get in there, no one's going to be happy. Humor,
Yeah.
being candid, getting to the point, of it is important. And I think it's the same thing, when we start talking about the next journey is have some fun with it. And I just think it should be part of the regular conversation of a family as a whole
Yeah.
about what if.
But the just because someone finds out they're going to die doesn't automatically mean that they're bestowed all kinds of wisdom and they have this ability to make everything right. The
That's right.
person who is alive is also going to be the person who is dying. So if you know them, then come at it from a way in which they will be able to accept it.
Mm.
I know there are, we've seen people who right up until a couple of days before they died didn't want to hear about it. They didn't want to acknowledge the fact that they were going to die. So you have to, if you're working with a parent or if you're working with a person who is young but has gotten a terminal diagnosis, then accept them where they are in that moment.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And sometimes, do you get hired as a death doula, end of life? I was going to say medulla. I'm going to call you the medulla.
Medusa.
Medulla. Medusa. I know. I
I
went
have
there like
worms
I
in my
did. I
hair.
saw snakes. I know. I was like, you got snakes. So did St. Patrick. He drove the snakes out of Ireland. But anyway, with do you get hired as a doula, a death doula, for people, end of life midwife? That's what it was. That's what I was trying to say. Trying to be more passionate. When you think about, maybe you have a loved one, maybe it's a parent and they've, got their calling card. And by the way, the calling card's not always right either. Just saying.
No.
My grandfather got his calling card a gazillion times and he's like, screw you, I'm not dying. And he didn't. And then one day he did. It was like his heart just gave
Just
out.
when
He
he
had
said,
so many things
now I'm
happen.
ready.
Yeah, yeah. He had other things he had to do first. And he was like, no, screw you, I'm not dying. He wasn't. And then yeah, then the family descended,
Yeah.
like a flock of birds. But anyway, and there was nothing there for them to flock over, but they did because he was a rock hound. And so he had all these
Oh,
gemstones and yeah. Anyway,
I had
yeah,
a
that
friend
was
call me the other day, or not call me, but ask my advice because she has a young niece who was given a terminal diagnosis. And
oh,
she was saying, she's not accepting the reality of her situation. And I said,
dude,
so,
don't.
okay, then
Yeah.
meet her where she's at and celebrate. If she wants to celebrate, then arrange, manicure pedicures. If that's her jam, do that with her. And she doesn't like, you don't need to force people to see their reality. They'll come to it in their own time.
And maybe they don't want to. Maybe they're just like, okay,
And
screw
maybe
it.
they
Just
don't
let me
want
slip
to.
into the void, you know? Let me just slip out of it,
And
So,
you
yeah.
get them ready. You do what you can. And I said, what you can do is say to them, whatever you need in this moment, I'll be there for you. If you need to cry and yell and scream, I'll listen. If you want to go celebrate, I'll go celebrate with you. Meet them where they are in the moment. Like, quit trying to, like, everybody has this, not everybody, but a lot of people have an
Mm-hmm.
image of how a dying person is supposed to act. There's no such thing. It's as
No.
varied as people in the world.
It's so funny because we just recorded our big big daily blend podcast with musician Joey Stuckey, and it was so funny. We were talking about summer road trips, and everyone, this is coming up for the Sunday and Memorial weekend, and we were talking about music for road trip music, right? You just did a big road trip. Did you play good music? I hope you did. That was a good
Yeah,
road trip from Savannah to
yeah, it
Nova
was.
Scotia.
I
Yeah,
sometimes I listen to podcasts too, and I listen to stories. I get something
yeah.
on, yeah,
That's what we were
Audible and
talking
listen
about.
to it.
And he goes, well, what about road trip movies? And I'm like, okay, well, I've got this one. And every single one I started bringing up, the main person in the story of the road trip was someone was dying. and they needed this
Yeah.
final road trip. And there's so many movies. Oh my God, there's one. Oh, now I've got another one in my head of the photographer, this famous photographer, and he was just a cranky old dude. And his son, he gets his son to take him on this final journey, and he was like one of the last Kodak film photographers. And oh man, and then he dies, and he went on the road with, yeah, man, see, it's crazy. There's always someone dying, and they take this final road trip. And half of the people that are on the road trip kind of know they're urgent about going on this, don't want to go, makes them, their lives are improved by going on a road trip because there's shenanigans on the road, and you need to have some shenanigans in life, whatever
Yeah.
kind of shenanigans, naughty, or you get yourself in trouble. If it's a clean, quiet road trip, you have to have some humor along the way and some things you've never experienced, new experiences. And the road trip thing, it's like interesting how it happens. There's the one with a comedian that was dying. See, that's it. Now I'm stuck. I'm in a rut. I'm in a rabbit hole of movies that are all road trips and someone's dying in them. And they seem to be pretty much my favorite movie because people go all out and live suddenly.
And
They
isn't
live.
that the point of it? Like they're saying, like, and for everybody listening, maybe that's the biggest takeaway from this is whether you want to accept it or not, you're going to die at some point and quit living a someday life. So
Yeah.
someday, my parents, someday they would travel, someday they would go do this, someday, and they ran out of time. They never did any of it. So if the words come out of your mouth, someday I'm going to do this, and you say, this is the thing. I had a brother who said to me, well, I could never afford to do that. And I said, he loves to play the slots. And I said, how much do you blow doing that? And it was probably 100 or more a week. So it was like, so let's conservatively say 400 a month times 12. You could go on a nice holiday for that. That would pay for your airfare and a week away almost anywhere in the world. So don't use money as an excuse, because for some people it is. For some people, I completely accept the fact that, there's people who have one child and they're paying way too much rent because rents are crazy right now, and between food and rent and raising a child, that's it. So you have a stay vacation and you paper the windows with pictures of the place you want to go, and you pretend you're doing it. Whatever you need to do, even if it's in your imagination, go to the place of your dreams.
You say such an important thing. As we do our parks and travel thing, our Love Your Parks tour, and we're documenting parks, and now some parks are really getting overflowed with people. Like they're flooding, and they're having to do a reservation system, and people are getting mad about it. But the reality is we need to protect this environment. So there's this initiative to take the parks outside of the park so everybody can enjoy them. So you can be an elder woman in Australia that maybe doesn't have the funding, or you could be in a nursing home. You're not going to
Right.
You're not going to be able to go to the Grand Canyon, but you can sure look at it and go there and watch movies and listen to the Grand Canyon Suite, which is beautiful, by the way. It's a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
But you can transport yourself. That's the power of books. It's the power of the arts. And they have also come out with all these studies about nature. And so it's about, if you cannot go into nature, say you're stuck in concrete jungle, like you're in New York City concrete. Well, you got Central Park. But if you're in a concrete jungle and maybe in a cubicle in an office, that's why you bring in a plant. Look, have screensavers. Remember when screensavers first came out on computers? Like, I know I'm dating myself, but like people don't remember the old bouncing ones. Like you'd pick your screen. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Those old bouncies.
absolutely.
I want the cards. I want the solitaire cards flying around. I want, like really dating myself now. But if you have a beautiful picture, it can transport you. And they're saying that it is like at least half of the positive things for your body, hormonally, emotionally, meditative, all of that all the positive things you go for going into nature, at least half of it. There's statistics out there and I can't quote them, but I know it's at least half of that you will get it in your body from just looking at those pictures and
Yeah.
not actually
Yeah.
experiencing it. I'm not saying don't
So,
experience it. I'm just saying like what you're talking about, put them up on, as a little girl, I was into horses and my bedroom was nothing but horse pictures. I'd get as many horse calendars and tear the calendars up and just take the pictures and my
yeah.
whole room was horses. And then suddenly in my life, I ended up with a horse, and Nancy had a horse, and it wasn't predestined to be, but it sometimes think that, we could be in the worst situations and you do things in a weird way to fulfill your dream, like you're saying, with the pictures on the wall. And through that, you can manifest something bigger than you ever thought. I'd never think we would have had horses ever, let alone our own property with stables and stabling people's horses. Never ever would have dreamed it would have happened at all. We were two
Cool.
renegades, not renegades, running around Africa. Like, what are we going to, and we did. And it's, I think sometimes if you're in a situation, you still got to have that power of magic that we just talked about. I'm bringing it full circle because
Yeah.
magic does occur. And don't give up. Give yourself some part of that dream because I do believe sometimes if you keep going on the dream, sometimes the stuff you're going through, that dream will actually happen. It's weird, but I do believe in that personally. That's just me. But I think you
You
can
know,
surround
Walt
yourself
Disney
and feel
said it
good.
best, a dream is a wish your heart makes.
Hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember
So
that
don't,
song? A dream is
yeah,
a wish
yeah.
your heart makes when
I
you're
love
fast
that.
asleep.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
And then
I
the
always think
dreams
about
that
that.
you wish may come true. Yeah.
When you go to bed at
Yeah.
night, don't you always go through that kind of stuff in your mind? Like you go to bed, and I think about that when people are like, we take out care of a lot of animals, and some of them are very sick, and like I literally coddle them. Like if they're elder or like they know they want that human touch. I don't care. I'll sleep on the floor with them. I slept on the floor with my horse. I did all that kind of stuff, and I still do because of that nurture, right? That
Yeah.
heartbeat to heartbeat. And when someone's passing, and even animals, right, and they have their dreams, even as they pass, they will still dream into they're having a dream, and next thing you know, they've crossed over. It's wild, but they do.
Yeah.
If you can even when you go to sleep, have those dreams inside you when you go to sleep. It helps you sleep. You feel better and things will actually work themselves out in your brain while you sleep. It's weird. It does. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think you
Yeah.
do it when you die. I have this feeling that you kind of have this visual thing that you're going. And I think you can see something. Now I've tripped off of subject, Lee. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to host you and keep you on track. But do you think that happens? Like you set up this like visual thing where you see your journey? Have you ever read any studies on that? Because I think it's cool. We need to do a whole show on actually
You
dying.
know what we should talk about, because all of the doulas I've talked about who have a lot more experience than I do, and they said it doesn't happen all the time, but for a lot of them, they know when a person is ready to pass, because the doctors will come and say, oh no, they've got, a few more weeks. And experienced nurses have said, no, they're talking to their dead mom. They're going to be gone within a day. And it's so universal that the person who is passing sees someone who they loved, and all of a sudden they believe that they're in the room with them. So, like there's things that we can't explain. So
Mm.
that's
I love
another
this.
show.
I love this that we're always talking about it. And now I'm going to get another press release and ad. But this is great. But no, because well, God bless algorithms. But really, honestly, thinking about this conversation, if the conversations happen early, if you work with a doula, so a family member contact you and say, my mom is passing, my aunt is passing, my uncle, my dad, brother, have people gone to you to help them handle stuff because maybe the person dying, like you were talking about, isn't going to look at it. They don't want to look at it. They just want to go. and they're not going to,
My
they're like,
client
screw
is
it.
usually the person who is passing, but a relative can call me to help that process. So it's sometimes, sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than to talk to the
Yeah.
person you love, because there's also a lot of the cases where they'll say, don't tell my daughter that I've only got a week because it'll upset her too much. And then the daughter is saying, don't tell my mom that she's passing because it'll upset her too much. Let her believe that she's still got a lot of time. So they're not telling each other the truth, and that's really common. So sometimes the role of a doula is to be the conduit for conversations.
Ooh, I just saw you, like because we know you and we finally did get to meet you in person. I just saw you standing there with your arms out and you've got like that heartbeat, like, the
Oh,
electricity wave going, like you've got the parents and you got the kid on the other side, one on each side. And you're like this, zzz, like Frankenstein, but not, you don't look like Frankenstein at all.
oh, good.
Quite the opposite.
Well, right now we're moving into a house, and one of the reasons that we're on the phone right now is because I'm in clothes, because I'm scrubbing floors and washing. I've got 2 dogs and lots of windows, and they were sparkling clean, and now they're all have nose prints at dog level. So.
Well,
I'm going
that's the
around
joy
cleaning.
of dogs. Well, listen, are you going to get the cicadas in Nova Scotia?
I
Yeah.
don't know. I've been reading about it, but I haven't heard anything. So
Well,
I'm
that's a
hoping
whole
not.
other thing. I know. I think about that. I mean, they come out of the earth, right? And so I'm thinking about that if we're buried down there. Like, I don't want cicadas
Ew.
coming out. Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna get into this we're gonna have to do a composting show, obviously. That has to happen too. So much fun always having you on this show, the Soul Journey Doula. Everyone, we're here every third Thursday. And as you can tell, we are candid, we are compassionate, sometimes passionate in all kinds of ways. And we do like humor because listen, I want to giggle on my way out. I don't know about you, but I would rather be smiling
Me
than
too.
crying. And I think
Sounds
everyone
good.
does. Yeah. And our thing is it's a send off. It's like, how do we do a send off? And yes, there's space for grief. And if you don't have grief, you didn't love, right? So grief is a positive emotion, of showcasing love and your heart
Yeah.
feeling things. And that's all you should be doing instead of all the other stuff that comes with it. So that's the point, right? The end of life doula is to help families get their stuff together and help the
Yeah.
person move off in a cozy, comfy way and have things in order. And then people can focus on love more than all the other stuff we don't want to talk about. Right? Did I
Sounds
do that
good.
well?
You did
Thanks,
that
Lee.
well.
All
Thanks,
right, Lee.
Lisa.
Everyone, souljourneydoula.com. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Soul Journey Doula show featuring Lea Brovedani. You can keep up with Lee at souljourneydoula.com. Follow our Big Blend Radio podcast at bigblendradio.com.